If your brain feels like a web browser with about 100 tabs open right now, music is playing from some totally unknown source, and you just cannot figure out how to close any of them, well, you are in exactly the right place. Welcome to This Explainer. We live in a seriously noisy world, and the modern struggles of overthinking, anxiety, and just feeling totally overwhelmed are more common than they have ever been. But today, we're going to look at a fascinating, ancient method for finding stillness.
So that brings us to this central question we are exploring today. Can reading a book actually heal your mind? Now, we usually think of reading as a way to just escape reality for a bit or, for pure entertainment. But what if a specific type of reading could be prescribed as a literal cure for a busy, stressed out brain?
Okay, let's dive right into this. The practice we're talking about is called bibliotherapy. It's a completely evidence-based creative arts therapy that involves the careful selection and reading of specific written materials as a therapeutic intervention. The goal here isn't just to pass the time on a rainy Sunday. It is specifically designed to promote psychological healing, manage mental health issues, and really spark personal growth. To truly understand how this whole thing works, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the healing power of books, and then look at how bibliotherapy works in the brain. Next, we'll explore the magic of Zen stories, dive into some specific tales for overthinkers, and finally, learn how to find real peace in the present. So, Part 1, the healing power of books. When you hear the word therapy, you probably picture a modern clinical setting, right? But prescribing literature as medicine actually has an incredibly long history. It goes way back. Over in ancient Egypt, right above the entrance to King Ramses II's royal chamber of books, there was a phrase carved in that basically translated to the house of healing for the soul. Fast forward a bit to the 19th century, and pioneers like Benjamin Rush started actively prescribing literature in psychiatric hospitals to help patients. During World War I, the Library War Service literally dispensed books alongside actual medicine to recovering soldiers. And today, it's evolved into a highly effective tool used right alongside structured cognitive behavioral therapy to treat things like mild to moderate depression and anxiety. Moving on to Part 2, how bibliotherapy actually works. Let's look at how this transitions from a really cool historical concept into a legitimate psychological process. Like, how does a story actually change your brain chemistry? Well, the science operates in 3 clearly recognized stages. First up is identification. That's when you're reading a story and you suddenly associate yourself with a character. You think, wow, I know exactly how that feels. Second is catharsis. By empathizing with that character, you get this release of emotional tension and a real spark of hope. You're feeling their struggles, sure, but you're also feeling their relief. And finally, there's insight. This is the big aha moment. It's when you take the solutions the character discovered and apply them directly to your own personal issues. That 3-step process is exactly how a story physically and mentally heals the brain. Now, you should know there are 2 main branches of this practice. On one hand, you have clinical bibliotherapy. This one is heavily structured, very cognitive, and usually guided by a trained psychotherapist using self-help manuals. But on the flip side is non-clinical or affective bibliotherapy. And this one is entirely different. It relies heavily on the power of creative fiction, poetry, and storytelling to build empathy and resilience. For the rest of our explainer today, we are going to focus entirely on this non-clinical, effective power of a truly great story. Which brings us to Part 3. The magic of Zen stories. When we talk about finding the kinds of stories that trigger that therapeutic insight we just talked about, spiritual, metaphorical folktales are honestly some of the most powerful tools ever created. To show you what I mean, we're going to look at the best-selling anthologies by author Kai Tsukimi, specifically from his Zen Storyteller series, including the highly acclaimed book A Cup of Zen. What Tsukimi does so masterfully is blend the simplicity of Zen Buddhism with the raw power of narrative. These aren't long, dense novels. They're flash fiction. They are short, incredibly thought-provoking tales designed to quietly shift the way you see the world and basically just snap you out of your daily mental loops. And when you engage with these specific types of stories, you unlock some amazing practical benefits. They're tailor-made for slowing down a racing mind, silencing that really harsh inner critic we all seem to carry around, helping you let go of anxiety, and ultimately finding peace in the present moment by just embracing life's imperfections. And the absolute best part, I promise you, these benefits are literally just a few minutes away. Let's get into Part 4, Zen Tales for Overthinkers. I want you to take a deep breath for a second and just settle in.
Our first story is called A Cup of Tea. Back during the Meiji era in Japan, a highly educated university professor visited the famous Zen master Nanen to inquire about Zen. Now, as the professor sat there, he just talked endlessly. He was expressing all of his own opinions, showing off his vast knowledge, just rambling on. Master Nanen quietly began to serve tea. He poured the professor's cup completely full, but then he just kept pouring. The piping hot tea spilled right over the rim, flooded across the table, and started dripping onto the floor. The professor watched this overflow until he literally could not restrain himself anymore and frantically yelled, "Stop! It is overfull! No more will go in!"
And this brilliantly illustrates our very first moment of insight. Master Nanan calmly looked at the frantic professor and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" I want you to think about your own mind right now. Are you so full of your own anxieties, your plans, your endless mental chatter that there is simply no room left for anything new?
Okay, let's look at another one. This story is called The Burden. A senior monk and a junior monk were traveling together when they came to a river with a really fierce, dangerous current. Standing right at the edge was a young woman, completely unable to cross. Now, these monks had taken strict, sacred vows to never touch a woman. But without saying a single word, the older monk just picked her up, carried her across the roaring river, set her down safely on the other side, and just kept on walking. The younger monk was absolutely horrified. For hours as they walked, he just stewed in this angry, judgmental silence. Finally, unable to hold it in for 1 second longer, he exploded, yelling at the older monk for breaking his sacred vows. So, the crucial point here is exactly how the older monk responds. He just turns to the young, angry monk and calmly says, "Brother, I set her down on the other side of the river. Why are you still carrying her?" The older monk left the event exactly where it happened, in the past. But the younger monk? He had been dragging the heavy weight of it in his mind for hours. See, I want you to ask yourself right now, what past mistakes are you still carrying? How much of your current exhaustion is just you stubbornly holding on to an argument from yesterday, a mistake from last year, or even a worry about a future that hasn't even happened yet? Overthinking is so often just our mind refusing to put down a burden that we've already crossed the river with. Which leads us to part 5, finding peace in the present. So how do we actually take these insights from ancient parables and apply them to the absolute chaos of modern life? Well, the overarching lesson here, drawn from these stories and the very core of Zen philosophy, is that the vast majority of our suffering comes from simply resisting what is. Regret, it's just a toxic attempt to twist the past. Anxiety, that's just a desperate attempt to control the future. Life is constantly flowing, exactly like that river. True peace is not found by digging your heels in and fighting the current. It's found by simply saying yes to reality, setting down your burdens, and dealing with exactly what is right in front of you. And I want you to notice how you feel right now after hearing those stories. This is the true science of non-clinical bibliotherapy at work. The power of a story allows us to embark on this imaginative journey together. If I had just stood here and lectured you with a bulleted list of facts about letting go of the past, you probably would have totally tuned it out. But because we use the metaphor of the monks at the river, you were able to bypass your mental defenses, experience that moment of catharsis, and arrive at the insight completely naturally. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. If your mind is a cup, and it is currently overflowing with stress, noise, and endless overthinking, what are you willing to empty out today to make some room for peace? The next time you feel completely overwhelmed, just remember that the healing you need might just be sitting on a bookshelf waiting for you. Go find a really good story, empty your cup, and see what insight flows in.